अब तेरा ही दिखेगा हुनर, होगी तेरी चर्चा, अब छपेगी खबर. Come on, yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome to this new episode of Hunar CHARCHA, and today we're going to be speaking to the team of Trial by Fire. Now, Trial by Fire is a new series on Netflix. It's a limited edition series. It's the top trending series right now, and it deals with a very, very tragic and grim episode that took place in India in the late 1990s, in 1997, about the Uphaar cinema fire tragedy, and 24 to 25 years of the struggle of the victims of being haunted and hounded by this tragedy of irreparable loss to their families, and the run from pillar to post, the struggle with all the courts right up to the Supreme Court, where many victims still feel that they haven't got closure. This is unfortunately a case of being a textbook case study of justice delayed is justice denied.
पिक्चर 6 बजे तक खत्म हो जाएगी.
हाँ.
तो मैं लोगों को 6:30
डोंट वरी.
बाय माँ.
बाय माँ. बाय.
कुछ और सालों की बात है. Then they'll be gone.
हटो.
हटो.
प्लीज मेरे दोनों बच्चे अंदर.
कौन बच्चे?
I'm looking for my children.
मुझे बाहर से रोक दे.
हमारे बच्चे अंदर फंसे रहे. अब तो अथॉरिटीज को एक्शन लेना ही पड़ेगा.
मैम आपको तो पता ही है ये सारी चीजें कैसे चलती हैं.
Let me introduce you to the team of this brilliant series here. It leaves you with a very heavy heart. It's a heart-wrenching show because, of course, it is inspired and it is directly about this huge tragedy. The director of the show, Prashant Nair, the actors, Rajshri Deshpande, who plays the role of one of the most visible faces here of this campaign and tragedy, Neelam Krishnamurthy, Abhay Deol, who's playing the role of Neelam's husband, Shekhar Krishnamurthy, and our experts for the team here behind the scene as well, because this is about recreating Delhi in the 90s, in the 1997 onwards, right up to date. So you're taking care of a different look which changes down the decades, different dresses, different wardrobes that changes down the decades. So we have Himani Dehelvi with us, who's the costume designer for the show, as well as Angelica Monica Bomek, who's the production designer for the show. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us. My first question here to you, Prashant. Prashant, for most of us who are familiar with this tragedy and this incident, one understood that this is going to be a series which would be grim from start to finish. So how did you deal with that, of deciding to retell a story which is largely grim throughout?
Well, I think that might have been the initial fear, from a lot of people. Our audience is ready for a story that's so hard-hitting and so grim. I mean, personally, and I think I speak for a lot of our team members, within the tragic circumstances, I feel like the Krishnamurtis and their strength and their resilience and their refusal to kind of back down in the face of a system that's designed to make you do that is somewhat inspiring, and we felt that despite how hard their story is and how long justice, which should have been obvious, has been delayed, the fact that they refuse to go down and that they keep fighting for what they believe in is inspiring in the end. And by sharing that story, perhaps we could encourage people to sort of look within and see if they can't find in themselves also some of that courage to stand up and fight for what they believe in, and in the process kind of affect change. So it is a definitely tragic, horrendous story.
Yeah.
But I think within it there's definitely a core that is very, very inspiring. And I think that's hopefully what people are, what's resonating with people.
Right. Abhay, for you, as far as familiarity with this case and the incident is concerned, I mean, for someone like me who was in school when the tragedy happened, and I remember the next day my classmate came and told me absolute details of the rescue operation, because she was in Green Park, and then it was much more than what we saw on the NDTV bulletin. And then as a journalist, I followed the case. I met the Krishnamurtis and followed various aspects and updates of the court hearings here as well. for you, Abhay, how familiar were you with this incident, and how much more did you know through this process?
I was also like just started college around the same time, wasn't it? Yeah, and yeah, I saw it on the news. I remember. I actually, ironically, remember looking at it in the news. It's
Right.
not something I dwelled upon. I mean, I didn't, unlike yourself, I didn't go into journalism, so it wasn't something I was keeping up with. But I strangely remember it, and with me, with a terrible memory. I guess it makes sense because it was such an impact for all of us, I think, involved, as you would imagine, right? And that it stayed with me. And what more did I learn about it through? So obviously, that familiarity got my interest. And so then I read it. I didn't know so much about Neelam and Shekhar and Avut. I knew none of that. So it was kind of a revelation, pretty much to me, that the families of the victims got together. This one particular couple were the force behind this entire organization, and everything that you see was new to me and inspiring. So I think if there's anything I learned through it, not so much about the proceedings, the physical incidents, as much as the drive of these people and their perseverance. I mean, that was what I took from this more than just the history.
And how much of it has stayed with you, because this is a battle they still wish to achieve to a conclusion that they would think that there is more closure. So how much of it stays with you? Do you also feel that there is no closure? Do you feel the burden of that?
Well, a lot of it starts with the fact that I obviously acted as Shekhar Krishnamurthy, so I had to kind of put myself in their shoes quite literally for a performance. And so you, as actors, when you portray characters, you anyways are trying to find something that you can relate to so that you can make it more natural and relatable to an audience. This one was tough because I just can't imagine going through what these people went through. And then, of course, they were inspiring because there's no pity here. Do not pity us. We're soldiers. We're going to fight this on. They're dealing with an issue that's systemic. That's something else that I was aware of. So it kind of makes you feel like their journey and what they have done so far, and they continue to do so even today, it kind of reminds you that, oh yeah, we have these systemic issues. And even with such a force as Neelam and Shekhar and Avut, families behind them, it's still something that's hard to shake. Like, what would it take? I've come to the conclusion that we live in a day and age where it's not leaders that will make the change, but people, regular people, and communities need to come together if they really want change. Leaders will come and go, and we live in a world where they can much more easily be brought down. But why do you need a leader to make the change you want? Why don't you lead yourself? Get together the people around you, because a leader can be targeted very easily. They're vulnerable, but an army cannot. A community cannot. So that's what I've really taken from it. And until that doesn't happen, we're going to continue to struggle with systemic issues as we have for decades.
Rajshri, if I could take that question to you as well. Apart from knowing the tragedy much more in detail, knowing the suffering much more in detail, the takeaway for you as a person and as a citizen from this experience?
So I was, of course, unaware of many details. I heard about it from my parents, but then later on, you go back to your life, a protocol life, get like education and job and everything. I also didn't know, it was not there in my mind. But when Prashant and my casting director, Sanjay Moria, approached me, I started reading everything. I started researching everything, that what exactly happened. And then, of course, he shared the script to me, and I was, as it was a tragedy, but I was very angry. I was also going through what Neelam was actually going through at the same time. And I was thinking that how unaware of so many people that they don't know, actually, there are two people, the whole system, there are the whole about people, they are fighting for this. And in many part of our India doesn't even know about it. They're not even following it. So maybe, so I felt, of course, I was angry on myself, but I started getting educated about this. But being a social worker also, along with that, I was very connected to the society, and I was already working on many other on-ground issues where, dealing with water or education or early child marriage is always I'm dealing with, and many of the disaster management also. I was in Nepal also after the earthquake. So Neelam's journey is, as a lot of times I was also going through the same thing, like things will not change. But I didn't have the courage like Neelam. I used to get like really, really disheartened. And a lot of times I felt that I want to move on. But I think this whole throughout journey of Neelam, for one whole year we were shooting, I felt that the courage is back. And now I'm seeing things in a very different way. I'm dealing on ground issues in a very different way. And I think all credit goes to Neelam, that, she taught me of, don't lose your hope, just keep fighting, finding way. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear how your real life character has inspired you. Abhay, for you, when you were playing Shekhar Krishnamurti, once again, there was some of what was known of him in the public domain, in interviews and all that he'd given, but throughout, it wasn't as in your face as Rajshree's character was. It was very restrained, and that was an equilibrium that had to be maintained throughout.
That's who Shekhar is. That's what attracted me to the character. He's not someone. He's just there trying to do his best quietly. Neelam is hurt. She's angry, rightfully so. She's passionate. And it's not like he isn't all of those things either. He is. But, she's strong enough to put in the front. And I think he's kind of supportive of her in the background. And he is kind of her strength. That's the dynamic that I like most about this couple, which is what Prashant shared with me. I think couples in real life tend to be this way too. One is always more dominant than the other. It's just a relatable kind of a thing. But I've always been drawn to people who are quiet. I've always, even in terms of actors, I've always been drawn to those who have a silent presence about them. And that's what I played with. And when you meet them in real life, they really are like that. Neelam is just as passionate as Rajshri portrayed her. She's just as energetic as she's ever been. And Shekhar is very warm and welcoming, but also the more quiet one. As far as challenge is concerned, I think challenge is only in the optics. Because, the eye always follows movement. It doesn't look at things that are stationary. Similarly, in performance, you're always drawn into the louder one because it's kind of dominating. It's natural human behavior. And you kind of, the quiet ones kind of fade in the background. And I always look for that person who has a silent presence about him or her. And those are the roles I always try to pursue throughout my career. Okay.
Rajshri, for you, for playing one of the most well-known visible faces of this entire incident, who was known to have become an activist because of the tragedy, and a change in personality that your character undergoes, this Neelam Krishnamurti undergoes down the journey of 24, 25 years. Was it overwhelming dealing with so much,
Her journey is so inspiring that, I kept on thinking that how Neelam and Shekhar every day get up and goes to the trial court and come back and then again fight. Again, the next day they get up. And so it's not just for 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or even 15 years. Today it's 26 years. We are here and they're still fighting for it. So it was a very, very inspiring journey for me. So of course, apart from the tragic part, I was always like, even throughout the preparation, I was just thinking that only, that I have to show the courage. I have to
Yeah.
show not just the struggle, but that, what do you call, but the whole journey of her, that never giving up. So
Right.
I was constantly, every day, that was my inner monologue, that whatever happens, you are not going to give up.
The question of recreating a certain look here, because it is not just the 90s, it's showing down 2 decades, and that transition that happens in the look and wardrobe of people and the characters as well. How challenging was that for you? Because it's one, recreating something which was 2 decades ago, and then coming back to what is today.
I am actually very familiar with Delhi, and I grew up in Delhi. I've lived in Delhi most of my life. So I think that was an advantage for me, that I was very familiar with you of all the characters that we were looking at. And there were many characters.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I mean, my job, I think, is how to facilitate the actors to be in a costume that makes them feel one step closer to the character. Basically, I think that non-verbal communication that costume can add to a storytelling is what I like to do. And I think,
but it's also many classes, different classes of people, different time.
Many classes of people, lots of time transitions, as you say.
Right.
So to establish them as people. So, for example, with Neelam and Shekhar, being the main protagonists, it was like building them up as people, and it was like designing for them like they would be in their homes. And obviously you're designing for them not knowing that their children are going to be lost in this after the first scene, literally, of the scene. So it's not like all their clothes can be planned for when they are, sad or have been to a funeral. So their wardrobe consists of things that they have. And then as time passes and they choose to, dress a particular way, or they put on weight, or they grow older, so they stoop.
Right.
We have, Shekhar develops a paunch, or Raj, for Neelam, she puts on a little weight or cuts her hair. All of those things just have to be enhanced by the costume. So I think for me in this piece, the biggest challenge was not to design anything, but to just put it there like real people. Just, I did a lot of references from friends and family who lived in that time, how they dressed, the fabrics and the prints that they wore.
Right.
And similarly for other characters, be it the Basti or be it the army setup, just to, just to give a holistic picture of how people dressed in Delhi in the 90s. It's a very typical, and Delhi people are very particular about how they dress. I always feel they're more particular than people in other parts of the country, and they have access to a lot of textile, and also without going overboard with it, without making it like India textile showcase.
And be real. Yeah, I mean, just being real, actually. Monica, for you, for someone who's once again grown up in Delhi, is very familiar with the different decades, but it's also about finding those things now, just finding very simple things to recreate that, just finding those same mobile phones or home appliances, or vehicles keep changing as well. What was the process and what was the hunt for you to keep recreating that?
Yeah, so that part of the process was definitely challenging, to get those finer nuances, to get the period right. But I think what was a larger challenge was that we were trying to recreate a different city in a different city. And these two cities are vastly different. Most of the series has been shot in Mumbai, and we were actually recreating Delhi there. So that itself was a thing, because they're very different, the two cities. I mean,
I really thought that was a South Delhi apartment and the roads and all. Gosh, you really fooled us.
That's what I'm good at. That's what I'm supposed to do. So no, really. So yeah, so right from finding the Krishnamurti home and keeping it similar to a typical DDA kind of structure, and the way it was stitched together with the exteriors, the court exteriors, which is again a very, very Delhi, Sarkari Delhi kind of vibe.
Yes.
Uphaar itself, we also shot outside the real Uphaar where Shobha ji does her bit. And so, I think for all of us, we have to be really careful about making or constantly remembering that we are trying to recreate Delhi here. And I think right from roads to, and when we started researching, I remember even sending out reference images of what pre-Commonwealth Delhi looked like, because Delhi's also changed a lot,
Absolutely.
and especially that area of Uphaar to Ames to Safdarjung, the Ames flyover, that whole place is like a different world. So I think period was definitely a big one, but getting the two cities right was the larger challenge. And again, because I was kind of very close to what happened, because I remember when the fire happened in Upahar, and I used to paint a lot those days. So my studio was on the terrace. I remember seeing the smoke bellowing for about 2.5
Yeah.
hours. And so years later, I would be reconstructing that, and Prashant would say, like, here, this is it, Monica, and I really want you on board, and let's do it. It was a very trippy feeling. The thing is, when you are aware of the fact that here are two people, and here's a bunch of people who've dedicated over 20 years of their life just to this cause, you don't want to trifle with it. You absolutely don't want to trifle with it. And across the cast and crew, nobody was trifling with it.
हम सुनने पे मजबूर करेंगे.
हम हमारी बच्चों की खुशी के लिए सब कुछ करते हैं जब वो जिंदा होते हैं तब. हमारे बच्चे जिंदा नहीं है, इसलिए हमें यहाँ आना पड़ रहा है, इंसाफ के लिए लड़ना पड़ रहा है.
उन्हें लगता है वो हमारे साथ जो चाहें कर सकते हैं, पर हम कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगे. आम लोग हैं, पर उन्हें अंदाजा नहीं है कि जब हम एक साथ जुड़ते हैं, हम एक दूसरे की ताकत बनते हैं, और ये ही उनकी गलती होगी.
How did you decide what to pick, what to leave behind, what to highlight, what to deal with, which witnesses to take up, which victims to take into account, which of those as well who were accused in the case to show their part of the story as well, a 360 on it?
I think, to be honest, we just scratched the surface of all the, the number of lives that have been touched by the incident. There were many, many, many stories that we wanted to include that we couldn't. As an example, in the final episode, there's a guy who brings his mattresses, to help. He basically took his own mattresses from his store and saved lives, and then he could get the insurance money for that, and his store went out of business. So the more we dug into it, the more there were countless stories to be told there. People who did very heroic things on that day, that remarkable people who really saved lives and so on. The big challenge was obviously, it's also, if you see in the series, the way we deal with time is we take these very bold leaps and we allow the audience to kind of fill in what's happened in between. And that's sort of the only way we could really kind of tell this story, is that the world around them is changing, and they're still fighting, and
right.
Thanks.
And they still have no closure. I mean,
I'll just add,
right.
because I'm happy we're doing this interview with Monica and Himani, is that for me, what was really great is that they both know Delhi so well, not just within their own crafts, at which they're the top of their games and wonderful collaborators, but it made my life really easy. I could just look at them and be like, would this really have happened? Or I had they were able to kind of weigh in on the script. They were
Absolutely.
able to from the beginning. So the collaboration was far beyond what is traditional.
No, and it's important that what we follow on Hunar TV is, our tagline is making arts accessible. It's all the more important that we have a lot of behind the scenes experts on board to talk about various other layers of the creative aspect of making shows in series or any creative piece, that that one doesn't get to hear as much. So yeah, absolutely. What do you hope to achieve from your series in real life, if I can ask this? Because I know how I know the impact of media. I know the impact of news. I've also seen the impact of films as well, how it has reflected sometimes in real cases, in reopening of cases here as well. Do you feel that the impact of this series that is had on the viewers and the public discourse can lead to a review, perhaps, in the case? Or do you hope?
Well, look,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, I'm hopeful that whatever attention the show brings towards the Krishnamurti struggle results in justice for them. In a way that them and the victims' families feel like their struggle has arrived at its conclusion. So for sure. But beyond that, I mean, look, I think the judicial system, there's 4.5 crore cases stuck in it. And public safety, the Mumbai Fire Brigade gets a call almost every day about a structural collapse. These are two pillars of any functioning society. And if the show can shine a light on the need for reform in those areas, then I think all of us would be very happy, because it's only going to get worse. It's going to keep building on it. And I think these are two things that every citizen has the right to demand of the society they live in, that when you go to the courts, you are protected, and that the courts exist to serve you. And the same thing with public safety. So these are hugely important issues that need reform urgently. So if the series is able to shine a light on that, which we're encouraged that it seems to be at least entering the public space in terms of discussion and so on, then I think we'd all be hugely gratified.
Wonderful. I think that's all the activism that we need coming in from different quarters, not just from activists and journalists, but of course everyone else from the creative world as well. Thank you so much for all of you being with us here on Hunar TV on our creative talk series, Hunar CHARCHA. Thanks so much, and many congratulations.
Thank you. Sorry for the chaos.